Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, dear all. Thank you for joining us for the exclusive webinar being conducted by NDC and Nashal Group. We welcome you all. I am Ali Raza. I am actually part of the NdcTech Thriving Digital Practice with an interesting mix of experience of over 20 years in technology governance, digital transformation, and information security. I always seek to acquire new knowledge every day. So today will be another learning experience for me, and I hope that the same for the audience as well. So before going to introduce my esteemed panel members, I will tell you about NdcTech. You already know NdcTech is actually a leading technology company transforming the banking sector globally. We are a leading partner of Temenos and a part of a systems group, which is a public listed company. We have the subsidiary. We are the subsidiary of Systems Limited. We are in the market for the last 22 years. More than 80% of the banks are actually running the Temenos product that we have implemented. We have implemented as an NDC at over 115 clients, both in Pakistan and abroad. Temenos itself is serving at least 3,000 financial customers, and 40 of the top 50 banks are actually the customers of Temenos different banking products like core banking, digital banking, and cloud-based products. So we believe in striking insightful dialogues and conversation with the leading industry experts to know more about the global know-how in the banking sector that is transforming every day. Every day is bringing something new and very exciting. So we are pleased to host this webinar today. So about this webinar, in this webinar, we have actually, hosting key senior banking officers from different banks, leading banks like Habib Bank, Faisal Bank, and Bank Al Falah. Today, we will talk about what are the current technology trends, what are the challenges and drivers that we have for the banking right now and for the coming years, what are the upcoming technologies that will be pivotal for banking by 2030, and how new global policies have changed the way regulators, consumers, and banks interact with each other. So I hope that this session will be very interesting for you guys. So, without much ado, I will actually introduce the panel members. They are very senior people with us, starting with Mahin Rahman. She is Chief Executive Officer from InfraZamin. Mahin, thank you for being with us on this session. Mahin was appointed as the CEO of InfraZamin Pakistan in 2020 and has played a crucial role in setting up the InfraZamin Pakistan, which you already know is an infrastructure credit facility. She is actually heading the Pakistan-based operation, and she has got over 20 years of experience not only in the infrastructure but investment banking, research, and asset management. So thank you, Mahin, for gracing this occasion. So we will, after the introduction, we will talk to you about, very interesting topics about infrastructure credit related financing and financial inclusion. So we have Ibrar Ahmed Mir. Everybody knows him. He is CDO and Chief Innovative Officer of the biggest bank of Pakistan. Thank you, Ibrar Saab, for being part of this panel. We welcome you here. He has got extensive experience and he has got blend of expertise in strategic thinking, creating new models, product ideas, and he has been a key innovators in the banking sector for a long time. So thank you for being part of this session. And we also have Muhammad Yahya Khan, who is head of digital banking Al Falah. Assalamu alaikum, Yahya. Thank you for being part of this panel. He's an experienced, digital officer, and he has got a very interesting background of financial, field as well, because he also did his chartered accountancy as well. So he has got a mixture of both finance and technology, which is a lethal combination. So thank you. Yeah, yeah. So along with Yahya, we also have Amin Rahman Saab. He is a chief digital officer of Faisal Bank. Amin Saab has got diversified banking experience. He has worked in large banks, public utility, and global financial services. He has held multiple portfolio and secured and unsecured segments of customer lending, spearheaded pioneering initiatives in fostering partnerships with fintechs, which is very important in the today's changing landscape. So I will start with the. Actually, I was planning to start with Yahya Saab, but because Ibrahim Saab has to leave early, so I will start with Ibrahim Saab. So Ibrahim, because being the head of, the digital head of the biggest bank of Pakistan, what are the key issues and challenges you face? Because your bank is also undergoing the digital transformation right now. So, what are the main challenges that banks faced during digital transformation, especially the size of the bank that you are, because it's quite difficult and it is complicated in many dimensions, because HBL is obviously a big bank, biggest bank in Pakistan. So, can you provide some insight on that?
Jay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, so, I think when we talk about the challenges that any bank would face in this day and age, I'm sure everybody else will share the same thoughts that as you're looking to transform a legacy structure, a legacy organization, the challenges that come are essentially around the way your technology stack is structured, the way your data is stored, the way the organizations think about partnerships, about designing and developing the products, and about transforming your thought process from becoming very inward looking to more outward looking, becoming more collaborative, more data driven, more partnership oriented. So that's a fundamental shift in the way you think, the way you look at things, the way you look at the customer, the way you look at engaging with the customer. Similarly, historically speaking, when you look at the banking industry, while we have the call centers, but that technically still does not make us a true 24/7 organization. So
Yes,
again, as you become more digital, as you become more technology driven, the whole organization needs to adopt, to change, to see how they can become truly 24/7 organization. So it's a journey. We have been at it for a few years. We have made sufficient progress, but I think we're certainly not where we want to be, and we will continue to move ahead on that journey. Hopefully we'll be closer to our dreams in the next couple of years.
okay, yeah, that is a very, solid point, because user experience and is the main thing, which is the crest of everything, that how user use the systems, and what is the user experience in that. So when you talk about legacy system and transforming it to the new banking system with multiple technologies, so there is a big component of cybersecurity as well, because what I see right now is that they are the two main trends in the industry, cybersecurity and digital transformation, and they go side by side, because obviously you need to secure, when you move from your legacy systems to the new banking systems transformation, there are many loopholes also happen due to that, and you need to cover that cybersecurity part. So, what are your thoughts on that? You can say on
Gee,
securing your assets, both online and offline.
so so cyber frauds is a global phenomenon. It's a very thriving industry. And as the globally the businesses become more digital, more digitally enabled, the frauds in the cyberspace are becoming more and more complex, more and more sophisticated. So the traditional ways of dealing with the frauds or financial crimes are not really going to be valid anymore. So as the criminals become more sophisticated, we as the industry also need to start investing very heavily in terms of technology, in terms of improving our capabilities to leverage data, to be able to deal with these kind of sophisticated frauds and crimes. And that becomes even more challenging because when you get into a digital space, the velocity of transactions increases manifold. So, the speed at which you need to be able to identify a potential fraud, react to that potential fraud, and be able to thwart that attempt, that becomes that much more demanding, that much more difficult. So, again, it's a journey. We have started that journey, but I think it's going to be a continuous battle that each one of us will have to continue to go on fighting, and then we will continuously learn. We do today. Every single day we find some new ways as to how people are trying to cheat the system, how they're trying to go out and hack into your systems. So we keep learning every single day, we keep on improving every single day, and I guess it's an ongoing struggle. It will keep on as we move forward, becoming more and more digital.
Yeah, this is a very important point because when your systems are getting sophisticated, as your nemesis also getting very sophisticated, cyber attacks are becoming more sophisticated because you used to be working on the legacy systems that were not very attractive to the cyber criminals because they have limited knowledge of that, like COBOL based systems or older technologies. But with the sophisticated technology, more open platform kind of things, cloud coming, so cybersecurity is becoming more and more a challenge, and it goes hand in hand with the transformation of any bank, because when they move to legacy to the new systems, that you don't know, uh, these systems are sophisticated, but the hackers are equally sophisticated, unfortunately. So, anyways, it's very important to make sure that you are actually, when you upgrade your system, you will also need to upgrade your security posture overall of the organization. So, sir, what are the ways to prevent frauds and scams in the local banking sector? We have seen lately a lot of scams, related with the ATMs and internet banking and phone banking. So, some of them have been controlled, but many of them are still flourishing. So, how to curtail these kind of frauds and to prevent frauds and scams in that scenario? So, frauds, not only frauds that are very sophisticated, but they are frauds like sharing of password, phishing, and things like that, which are very common, and due to the education level that we have. So, how you foresee how to manage that and how to prevent such kind of frauds?
Gee, I think, I wish we had that magic recipe that could bring the frauds down to zero. Uh, Globally speaking, when you look at even the most sophisticated and advanced markets, where the consumers are supposed to be more aware, more educated, more well informed, even there, these very basic identity theft frauds or phishing or wishing kind of frauds, they are thriving and they just continue to grow. So I think that's part of the challenge that we continue to deal with. And there is always going to be a continuous effort to educate the customers, to create more awareness, and then we continue to try and create more controls at our ends. But obviously, you have to try and strike a balance between making it extremely difficult for your genuine customers to transact or making it very unfriendly for them to transact versus keeping most of the fraudsters away. So that's the balance that we continue to try and strike all the time. And then again, like everywhere else, it is an ongoing struggle and battle for us, and it will continue to be.
Yeah, that's true because this will continue like that. And when you talk about digital channels, so Yahya has got a very interesting infographic slide that he wants to show. And because most of the frauds are done through digital channels, but right now we will discuss what are the different digital channels that we have and what are the future trends in actually in the banking sector and financial sector. So can you put up this infographic slide of Yaya? So we will continue with that. Yeah, that's very interesting. So Yaya, can you shed the light on that?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Ale, and colleagues and listeners. So, I have attempted to put down, this is obviously no definitive list. I've attempted to put down what I feel may be some of the emerging trends in banking. There are 8 in total. You mentioned up to 2030. Perhaps some may happen more than the others. So the first one is uh, embedded banking as well as embedded lending. So I think the start of this was when first the bank started opening accounts for the non-resident Pakistanis through the initiative which is called the Roshan Digital Account, which was the first initiative when a full-fledged bank account could have been opened in Pakistan. Now, since that day, obviously the APIs have been developed, and now with the arrival of open banking, I feel that banks may be embedding their APIs for account opening in various different apps where the customer may have a need for opening a bank account. Um, Similarly, on the lending side, if you most of us may have experienced this, that if you go to let's say buy a car in anywhere in the West, they ask you whether you want to buy it on cash or whether you want to buy it on installments, and it's the dealership which actually offers you an installment plan, um, or you go and buy a sofa or a fridge or a freezer or whatever that is. So, and it's not actually that point of sale which is offering lending to you. It's actually a bank which is embedded in that value chain of that particular retailer at the back end. Um, and more often than not, the customer, only to the extent of regulatory reasons, don't even know or appreciate who the financial services provider are. So I feel that I think now both for digital lending as well as account opening and other services, the APIs have been developed by most banks, and I think we'll see the time when these are going to be embedded into various different customer facing apps, in addition to banks continuing to also getting their own customers directly on their channels. So that's the first trend I see happening. Moving on, I also feel that the phygital banking may have its space even more so in the future. For example, a good example of phygital is ATM machines, which uh, which is a device which comes in between of being a fully digital or being a fully physical, or a POS machine where the digital payments are made, are all generally or loosely referred to as phygital. or in some cases now the cash deposit machines. So short of a consumer becoming fully digital, where he or she does not have the need of going to a physical channel and having a human conduct a transaction for them, they may still be going to a physical channel, but there may be using the digital services. So I feel that that may take its shape a little bit more than it has done so far. With that happening, the third trend I see happening in the future is the the role of branches. I feel right now the branches, or 65 to 80%, depending upon the banks, what branches do are check in, check out, cash in, cash out. So they are largely a service center. Uh, but with these services moving to either embedded banking or phygital banking, the role of branches may develop into becoming a sales center and selling more core banking products and services rather than acting as a service center. The fourth trend I see happening is perhaps now the banks, or relatively sophisticated banks, have now started measuring what is their digital to over the counter transaction ratio with their customers. So once again, digital versus physical. And in the relatively advanced markets, this ratio is, and some banks in Pakistan, operating some of them are also represented on this panel, already operate in 70s, or 70% of their transactions that now happen digitally, and less than 30% are happening over the counter in branches. I see that ratio inching towards more like a global standard of 90% and above, um, in the years to come. The fifth trend I see happening is the adoption of digital payments. We know that while in this fiscal year there has been a surge of point of sale devices when it comes to the acceptance points for digital payments. A significant, I think we have now well over 100,000 payment acceptance points in the country, but the need in the country is a lot more. So with RAS now establishing itself as a person-to-person payment mechanism, or being in the process of establishing itself, very soon we'll now see the person-to-merchant or merchant-to-person pull or push payments coming in. And as we all know, with RAS, a transaction can happen on a person's phone number, which is mapped to their account number. So with that, I feel that the adoption of digital payments, or the acceptance of digital payments, may get its boost. The sixth trend I see happening is that of the digital Islamic banking. In Islamic banking, as a few of us may know, the sequence of documentation and the authenticity of documentation is very important. And digital helps in both of those fronts, which has been a pain point when conducting Islamic banking on paper, because the sequence of the events, the ownership of an asset in the bank's name before the bank can give it out on ijara, or murabaha, for example, is difficult to maintain. So digital helps there with technology such as blockchain or even simple technologies. So that I see happening. The penultimate trend that I see happening is that of cloud hosting of banking applications. I think we've started to see the gradual acceptance of this. We would see even more acceptance of this first on the private cloud networks, and then on public cloud networks as well, because the advantages of hosting the technology application stack on cloud just has just become so much more now. So I think while we understand that we'll have to work with the data and the regulatory framework in the country, but that is something that just cannot be avoided. So that would happen more and more. And finally, I think we've already started the discussions I mentioned earlier on open banking. I feel that the fintechs and banks, especially with embedded banking as well as with open banking, the fintechs and banks would continue to start working more and more together. and see themselves as collaborative partners. So that, in nutshell, I see the future trends.
That's interesting. You have summarized all the future trends in a single infographic slide. What you see for the industry in general and Bank Alfala in particular. The application of these trends. What you see, have you started with it? Are you in middle of that? You know, what is the maturity level right now?
I think most banks are doing a few of these things, if not all, already, including Bank Alfala. And I see that I think over the next few years, they would start to take shape. So yeah, so I think the industry is aware of most of these trends happening and more. As I said, this is not an exhaustive list of things, but these are such some of the trends that I feel happening. So yeah, so I think different banks are in different levels, but nothing that is here would be something that banks are not aware of.
Right. So, what do you think? What should be the industry stakeholders should do further to promote, modern digital banking services in Pakistan? If you have these, trends there, are there anything else that we can add into that?
So look, I think we've been relatively lucky in terms of the regulatory framework, and as I said,
Yeah.
we were also lucky that we do have an established national database authority, which is then used for performing the know your customer checks, which then in turn allowed, as well as a relatively established infrastructure of biometrics. So a physical infrastructure of biometric, now also a software-based infrastructure of biometric. I don't know whether you're familiar, but most banks now have the application which uses the camera and the
Yeah.
thermal and the heat sensors of the
Face
phone
recognition. Yeah.
to perform not just the facial recognition but also the biometric recognition,
Yeah.
which is not very prevalent in the rest of the world. And then they send those pairs to this national database authority. So we're lucky in that. So I think we have some infrastructure which, frankly, from my experience, is better than in the West, such as Nadra that I mentioned, such
Yeah.
as some of the regulatory interventions that have happened, for example, allowing the non-resident Pakistanis to be able to open a full-fledged account onshore. Uh, but I think there needs to be more work done on the legal infrastructure
Aspect.
side aspect. You know what happens to the laws and the rights of the repossession, if ever it comes to that, or what happens to the rights of exercising the collateral that might be pledged. So I think those laws perhaps need to get matured a little bit more, and then a few
Yeah.
other things that need to happen. But as I said, I think where the work should have started on the regulatory side has started.
Yeah, that's right. That's true because what I feel is that in addition to laws, there should be further strengthened. There should be laws related with the cross-border transactions and cross-border like cloud-related services should also be taken care of because of the world is going. World is very progressive, and unfortunately, we have some limitations from the regulators and government agencies. So, anyway, so two main things that you have mentioned, like in this slide, that the role of regulator and the Islamic banking. So, Islamic banking regulator is like State Bank is itself promoting banks to have have Islamic banking services, and we are lucky that we have Amin Saab, who is actually representing Faisal Bank, which is an Islamic bank. And I think if I am not wrong, it's a born again Islamic bank because back in 2004, when I was consultant to Faisal Bank and I was converting their IBS, Islamic banking system, to their symbols, at that time it was also Islamic bank, and it became conventional, and then again it became Islamic. So it's a whole 360-degree cycle. So Abhi Saf, uh, the 2 points that Yahya Saab mentioned, in the future trends is Islamic rise of Islamic banking, and the other point which is very pertinent is regulators, interest in Islamic banking. So, give your views. Like, we want to know more from you because of the current status of Faisal Bank, which is now Islamic Bank. Over to you,
Ji,
Mr.
welcome everybody. Thank you, Ale. An interesting question indeed. And to sum it up, when you were referring to Faisal Bank, I'll just share that the journey is, in a simple term, if I'll put it, is imagining the unimaginable. Because when Faisal Bank embarked on its journey from converting from conventional to Islamic, there was no local or global precedents available for a
That's
large
good.
conventional bank to convert or migrate towards Islamic banking. So, of course, there has been the regulatory framework, which has also evolved over time, etc. And I think it is the main strategy has been the faith and belief of the management, the stakeholders, the sponsors who believe that this is indeed the way forward. And Alhamdulillah, now we are referenced as the world's largest conversion from conventional to Islamic journey. Having said that, Islamic products by themselves have a huge market. So, like everybody is saying, or the entire proposition is revolving around the customer. The most important thing is what is it that the customer wants. So, in this day and age, the customer wants seamless service. He wants the fastest response, and he wants to be served in the right manner on the very word go, on the very first instance. So I'll give you an example that, speaking of Islamic products, we got a full menu, whether it's accounts based on Qard, Mudarba, Musharaka, etc., and even on the credit card front, where traditionally Islamic banks don't wish to enter. So everybody over here must have heard about the Faisal Islami Noor card. So it's Pakistan's first Islamic-based credit card, so to speak, on the principles of tawarruk. So there's indeed a huge market out there. It's one of the fastest growing products for Faisal Bank. So the reason why I'm mentioning it is because the customer receptivity is there. But what is it that the banks collectively or the industry collectively, especially digital banking that we're speaking about right now, what we need to focus on? So there's a collective nemesis which is coming out, which is that everybody knows that cash is still the king. Yaya mentioned that there are 100,000 terminals now, but we also need to see the flip side. There are 40 million plastic circulating in the market and only 100,000 terminals to service those 40 million plastic cards. So the journey has started. The regulators also being quite conducive in terms of promoting the digitization effort, but there's a great deal that needs to be covered still. So there are a lot of impediments. I mean, like, these figures sound interesting that there's a lot of potential, but we also need to look at the regulatory, the legal framework, etc., and create an environment which is conducive for the banks and, let's say, the retailers as well to adopt that technology.
Right.
Because going forward in a market like Pakistan, so it's not just purely, you cannot say if digital is going to be the mainstay of the physical space will continue to be the king, but the strategy should be the brick and click strategy, which Yaya also mentioned as phygital. So the brick and click is what the customer wants because he needs to be served. He's got a hybrid requirement. He has,
Yeah.
you and I as customers
Sure.
also want to conduct transactions on the mobile app, the internet banking, WhatsApp banking. At the same time, we also have physical needs where, downstream retail merchants, they're still asking for cash. So ATMs is a huge network in Pakistan. So if you look at one of the most interesting examples over here in our market, I'll speak from live example, real life story. So look at the malls. Each and every retail outlet in a mall will have a POS terminal for accepting plastic payment, card payments, cashless transactions. Having said that, still, you'll find the largest number of ATMs also installed in malls. So the customers, it's more of a psyche, it's more
Yeah.
about a
Yeah.
mindset. So, and also taking up on the point that what needs to happen is that in digital banking, we need to go beyond the traditional channels. Contact center used to be considered as kind of like digital banking. But the point is that you need to reach out to the customer at a medium what he is more comfortable with. This is why one of the most fastest growing trends is WhatsApp banking. The customer does not want to call at the call center, wait for 5 minutes queue, or maybe there's a downtime, etc., whatever else the issue may be. So you have to figure out what is it that the customer, which medium does he want to interact with you. So this is where the evolution is going to come in from. So we've seen globally trends emerging like social media banking, WhatsApp banking, etc. Look at China, there's WeChat, etc. QR codes has been successful in some markets. Pakistan has had its fair share of experimenting,
Yeah.
but
We are still struggling. Yeah.
yeah, we still
With the
struggling.
QR, yeah, we're still struggling with it.
You're absolutely
China
right.
and Asia Pacific is far ahead in that area. Yeah.
You're right. So you see, the golden part is that there's no one single solution which works for all. So you have to figure out what fits or what's the best strategy for your markets. QR has worked well in a lot of markets, especially where initially bankers have felt, or the payment system players have felt, that QR could have been a game changer for Pakistan as well, because it reduces your cost of acquisition for the retail merchant. You don't have to deploy a $200 terminal at his
Yeah,
retail outlet if he's a downstream merchant. But having said that, there
that's
have been
true.
other impediments, challenges. So the biggest part is that you got to figure out that from the bank's perspective, there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of the customer experience. If you look at consumer banking, SME banking, corporate banking, wealth management, etc. So historically, what even Abrar was referring to, that legacy systems. So each of these verticals would have probably be having their own systems which are carrying forward.
Yeah.
There's no convergence. So what happens is that the lack of convergence is leading to delayed insights. If a corporate entity is banking with you, and they've got the employee banking accounts with you as well, so you should consider them as one single relationship. But you'll be treating the corporate as a separate entity, on a separate platform. You'll be treating the customers on a separate platform. So the data insights, they are there. We keep on talking about the data is the big oil, or data is the next big thing, but that convergence needs to happen. So this is I think one of the most important trend that we need to look out for, that harnessing data as an asset.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I have got a like couple of questions that I will park for later, and I will ask you. I will now move to Maheen. Maheen brings diversity of views here, because her area is not a commercial banking area, but it falls under the financial sector. So Maheen, yeah, I earlier discussed with you. There's an interesting thing which is guarantee framework for investment. So what is that? Because I am a novice in that. So I want to know, our audience want to know more about that, because mine actually representing Infra Zamin, which is I think the biggest infrastructure related credit facility. So yeah, over to you, mine.
Gee, thank you. And it's been really interesting hearing about all the digital banking that's happening. And I think just before, I'd just like to take a bit of a step back and see, where are we sitting today in terms of the banking
Yeah.
framework. And it's nice to see Yaya on the call, because I think at Al Falah, we did a lot of work together to enable customers, whether they were at the bank or the AMC, to pick up investments in funds, etc. So, I mean, broadly, if we look at the demographics of Pakistan, we have a tremendous amount of youth, all of which will be early adopters to technology, both currently as well as in the future as well. And I think the broad questions we kind of have to ask ourselves are, and we've heard this a number of times through the speakers today, is how can we make it really easy for people to come and transact? And I think we're certainly a way down there. But there's obviously always that room for improvement. And in a country such as Pakistan, the elements of financial inclusion specifically cannot be ignored. So the kind of future that we would be thinking about in terms of digital banking and digital infrastructure setup as well would be how simple and how easy is it to open a bank account? How long does that process actually take? Is it instantaneous in certain cases? And does it take longer in other cases? And how can we break down some of the red tapeism within bank processes and digital banking processes? There's been a lot of work done around that, and I think that's something that certainly has been tackled quite effectively. But in other areas, we talked about the Noor credit card, and I've certainly heard a lot about that. So kudos to Faisal for bringing that one out. As far as the ability of all sort of bankable customers in Pakistan to get a credit card quickly, online, and efficiently, I think that's something that will be a demand from the client base in the future as well, especially if we're trying to get over the hump of just having 1.5 million credit cards in issuance over the last decade or so. I think at the same time, it needs to be much simpler to transact, to buy product. So when we talk about buy financial product, It could be insurance, it could be a mortgage, it could be a long-term loan, it could be a short-term loan, it could be SME-related lending, it could be commercial lending. There are countries in the world, and even if we look next door in India, there's been quite a lot of work done in developing the ecosystem around accessing credit quickly and efficiently. And that's something that I think in Pakistan we are working towards, and we need to work towards, because we do have general underleverage on both households as well as commercial enterprises here as well. So holistically, when we look at it, the entire sort of framework that we have currently developed has been incredibly effective in transactions, in terms of attracting customers to the platforms for basic needs such as bill payments or payments platforms. But I think moving up the value chain, which we're seeing a lot of banks do now, is certainly, I think, going to be sort of the tipping point on a number of financial products that I think young people and the youth at least would be interested in over the next 5 to 10 years or so. I think when we talk about digital infrastructure, and that's something where Infrazamin has been very closely involved in. We look at fiber optics, we look at telecom towers. See, the vast majority of our data speeds and our data networks come from our telecom providers, and tower fiberization is very key. Upgrading on the data speed is also quite critical. So that's an area that we've been quite involved with in terms of looking at the actual hard backbones that are needed to bring that sort of internet and data access across the country, and not just, I would say, in first tier or second tier cities, because I think that's when the outreach of that financial product can be made much more available. Hence, we bring in the whole concept of financial inclusion and the ability to provide financial products to a much wider market as well. I think just the only 2 points that sort of highlight as well, they've been kind of touched upon on data security. But I think big concern areas can continue to sort of evolve around data protection and client protection on information, and how that information on clients is stored and accessed. And I think the more we find ourselves on common platforms, the more that becomes relevant, whether it's private sector or public sector. So those are areas where I think even when we want to attract, for example, foreign investment into the country to invest in the digital space, and I know there's digital banking licenses are still out, and we've had a lot of foreign interest around that. But there the questions would be asked: do we have the right policy and regulatory frameworks in place for customer information protection and underlying data protection as well? Because right now, we did have a number of draft regulations, but I don't think anything quite got to the point where it could actually be sort of locked in. So I think those are sort of key developmental areas. And certainly, I think the digital transformation journey that we're seeing of a number of financial institutions is very exciting, and very positive that it will continue to yield the benefits that we look for in terms of social and financial improvements and inclusion.
Okay, that is very insightful. And you did mention a very significant point about data privacy, because the backbone of everything there, like even in investment, foreign investor, they ask, not only how the data is used, and how the data is stored and accessed, but also how the data is used of the customer. Uh, we have got a lot of data, but uh, in Western countries where I have seen, they need permission to how to use that data. You cannot give this data to any third parties. You cannot manipulate its data to offer them new services. So uh, the usage of data is very important as well. Which is also a very important point that you have raised, which is part of, you can say, data privacy. So another thing is that all that infrastructure financing and infrastructure investment and access to that kind of credit will enable the digital banking and future trends in Pakistan. So which is like a backbone of everything that we are doing and what we are going to see in future. We have proper fiber optics, data centers, and infrastructure which is supporting the and enabling the digital transformation and providing digital services. So you did also mention the role of Turkey, which is a country, has a very, we have got very old ties with Turkey. They have a very interesting model of infrastructure related investment. Can you provide more details on that?
Sure. And it's more in the context of sort of credit access.
Okay.
So we do have that issue in Pakistan where credit is not freely available. Let's face it, right? So whether you are an SME or a commercial client or a retail client, or even a corporate client, there are a number of boxes you have to check in order to avail credit from a bank. And this has been a pain point, I think, for a long time. This is not a new issue over here. So hence the concept, I think what they've done in Turkey, which is a far wider and larger market than ours, naturally, but they have made the provision of guarantees or credit enhancement available on a retail basis and via digital platforms, as
Platform.
opposed
Okay.
to just simply going through a branch network or the physical network that we talk about. So the process is very simple. If you're applying for a credit card, or you're applying for a loan, or you're even a commercial enterprise who is looking to avail credit, there are mechanisms in place in Turkey by the name of, there's a company by the name of Guarantee, actually. And what it does is you can simply apply for that loan along with a guarantee product from that company, which it makes it very easy for the bank to then provide that loan. So with that, you end up freeing up quite a fair amount of liquidity into the credit market on in sectors where perhaps you would not normally see it. If we look at Pakistan, the ability of a client to avail a personal loan, for example, can be quite onerous. And similarly for other sort of enterprises as well. But Turkey has actually managed to make this a completely retail product. Today in Pakistan, this is a corporate product. It's a large-scale project finance product. But actually, they've taken it a whole step further through an entirely separately set up digital enterprise and digital platform that brings together both the bank, the borrower, and wraps it all around in a guarantee to enable both parties to be comfortable with each other. And in doing so, they've actually released a tremendous amount of credit into the market. And one of the things that came out from that whole system was that the recent sort of downturn, if you like, that everybody's seeing, the recession, the inflation rates, etc. What they saw was an actual uptick in the demand for credit because inflationary pressures had just made it very difficult for people to make ends meet. And the fact that there was actually credit available via various comfort factors given through guarantees, etc., made it very easy for people to avail that credit and bridge the issues that they were facing in their daily lives. So, these things can have significant impact both on a social level as well as on a financial level. And I think it's important that we learn from those markets that have those similar dynamics and see how we can bring some of that knowledge and product here as well.
Yeah, that is a very very relevant socio-economic model that countries like us can adopt to provide easy credit to the masses instead of just corporates. So very interesting point. So Main, thank you for some insightful discussion. So I am coming back to Amin Saab, where I parked some questions. So now you are a Islamic bank. So the question, the $1 million question is that what additional or what extra you can provide to your customer that you can't provide when you were a conventional bank. So with the Islamic banking proposition there, and now you are a fully Islamic bank, so what are the additional benefit that you can provide to customers? So customer will ask, what is in it for me when Faisal Bank, Faisal Bank, because I am a Faisal Bank customer. Now I have got two cards. I have got Noor Islamic card and I have got Platinum card. So uh, I don't know. I am using both of these cards. So what is in it for me that Faisal became Islamic?
Right. Very good question, Ale. And Happy to hear that you're a happy Noor card
A
customer
happy
as well.
customer. Yeah. I
Yeah.
just received it actually.
Acha, okay. So, coming down to the point, it's about carving the pie because the audience available, there could be multiple layers, there could be multiple slicing of the universe of the customer universe which is available. A lot of customers actually don't, for them it doesn't make a difference, but there's a huge audience out there who actually have a demand for, a requirement or need for Islamic products. So, like you earlier mentioned, and like I earlier mentioned as well, that Noor Islamic, Noor Bank, Faisal Islami Noor card. So, one of the key reasons was that the credit cards have been there in Pakistan for the last 2 decades, right? But we've only been struggling at that same level, about 1.5 million, X million. I can give you examples. A lot of retailers who do not keep POS terminals at the retail outlets because they don't believe in, giving or conducting transactions through credit cards. So
Yeah,
just imagine
that's
if
true.
there's an
Yeah.
Islamic product out there, an Islamic credit
Yeah.
card. So there's a huge lot of retailers, or let's say merchants, businesses out there where this opportunity opens up. Not only providing them acceptance points, allowing them to increase their businesses, but you're also empowering the customers to transact in a manner which they actually might have not thought of before, because a lot of customers did not apply for such things. And this is just one example. We also have entered into a number of areas. For example, there's durable financing. Now, durable financing has been there in the market for a very long time. You would never associate that with Islamic Bank. But we have created that framework where we call it Faisal Takmeel, which is based on the concept of Musawama, where durable financing, walk into a shop, you walk off with TV, mobile phone, etc. So it's all about creating that new market and audience. That latent demand was always there, but nobody was addressing it. So, to answer your question, addressing that latent demand is what is our focus number one. And like you mentioned, it's not just Faisal Bank, because the market is so huge in terms of the potential opportunity that there's healthy competition. We'd be more than happy to compete in the space with others come into the arena.
Excellent. So, now this lead to my question to all audience, Abrar Saab, Yahya Saab, and Mahin, that what you see your bank conventional vis-a-vis Islamic bank, the future trends, how they are with reference to Islamic banking, and how they differ from Islamic banking and differ as per the conventional banking. So, what future holds for you? So, starting with Abrar Saab, because he's also heading the innovation. So, and you also have the Islamic window as well.
Gee, thank you very much. So I think we continue to operate both in the Islamic and conventional banking space, and we continue to cater to both the segments. And as a part of our roadmap, we will continue on that journey. And as long as there are customers, depending upon what their needs are, what their demands are, we will aim to continue to provide for their needs, depending upon whether they want it through a conventional channel or they want it through an Islamic channel. Both of those will continue to be an area of focus for us going forward.
So you are catering both kind of customers, like whoever they require, whether Islamic services or conventional banking services. So, we are leading towards the end. So we have hardly 7 minutes. So there is a small rapid fire round. So I will ask just one question, starting with Mahin. Where do you see the infrastructure sector of Pakistan in next 10 years? Because you are heavily in the infrastructure related credits
I
facility
think it's a
actually.
very loaded question, Ali, but I think the demand is there, the need is there. It's on companies like us and banking institutions that we have around the room to see how we can help finance and meet some of those needs. So I think the onus and the burden is very much on us and the project owners to come forward and ensure that they are able to build and develop projects that can meet the needs of our population. So I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that infrastructure is crucial to Pakistan's development going forward.
So, as this is the forum is on the future trends, so what you see, your kind of model will be replicated in future in Pakistan. There
I
will be
think
more similar kind of companies that you already like. You are one of the leading one of the such company. Do you see more?
so. There are actually probably only 5 infrastructure guarantee providers in the world. So the fact that we
Oh,
have,
okay.
yes, so the fact that
All
we
over the
have
world.
all over the world. So the fact that we
Interesting.
have, we have multiple multilaterals and development finance institutions that offer guarantee services, that's for sure. But as a dedicated infrastructure guarantee provider and financier, there are only actually 4. And the fact that we have one in Pakistan, which is funded and sort of sponsored by several European governments, I think should give us all pause for positivity. That this business model can work, and it has worked elsewhere, and it has already demonstrated via transactions that we can actually facilitate lending towards the infrastructure field in Pakistan. So I think it's very good generally as a market practitioner. I've been in Frazam in 2 years now. But coming from the conventional finance sector, I can tell you it's a very unique institution that has tremendous amounts of potential to really unlock private capital and shift that towards the very necessary financing of large-scale infrastructure projects.
That's excellent. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
So yeah, yeah. The rapid fire question is that with more and more entities providing digital banking services, and there are more digital banks coming up in Pakistan, how can commercial banks like Al Falah stay ahead of the curve and stay competitive? It's also a very loaded question.
So look, commercial banks have to play to their strengths, and one of their strengths is the trust that they enjoy from the customers who have been trusting them over decades in placing large sums of money with those banks.
That's
Uh,
true.
in my previous life, when I was managing a mobile money service, the average deposit per wallet was less than 1,000 rupees, whereas an average deposit per account is north of 300,000 rupees. So I think there's a huge disparity between where the customers wish to keep the money. So commercial banks have got nothing to lose. They don't have to worry about anything. I think what they've got to do is embrace some of the digital technologies that are coming up, look for collaboration and partnership opportunities, and play to their strengths. So I think the short answer is there are opportunities more than threats that exist for commercial banks.
So yeah, that's great. So I am very happy to hear that this the phrase that we have nothing to lose. So this is a phrase like it's my favorite phrase. Like we have nothing to lose, so we are in some comfort level. So Ibrahim Sahab, tell us about 3 steps which large banks should take to stay abreast with the continuous innovation. Like we are talking about future trends, so innovation is part and parcel of the future trends. So what do you think the three
So,
steps or 3 things that big commercial banks will do to stay abreast with the continuous innovation?
gee, I think besides some of the things that my other colleagues in this panel have talked about, a couple of things that the commercial banks or any kind of a financial service product offering entity will need to look at is to focus on trying to get to a stage where they are practically a near zero operations entity. So that means you become fully automated in your processes, become more and more straight through in your processes. The second thing I think more financial industry players will start to become is to become more like providers of value added services. So you become through your open API architecture and a microservice architecture, you become more of a value-added service providing hub that seamlessly integrates with the ecosystem to create more value for your customers, which goes beyond than the typical just payments and the lending products that we conventionally talk about.
Right.
The third element will have to be to continue to focus around data integrity and data prevention and figuring out ways of how to leverage data to make life more simpler, more convenient, more flexible for the customer. Because if the customer is happy, then the financial institution will thrive at their end as well. And one last thing, which we don't typically talk about, but I think as you move forward, responsible financial institutions will need to continuously keep thinking about ensuring that they are contributing towards a more sustainable growth. They are focusing and they are thinking of being environmental friendly. So that element and an element of enabling large scale inclusion. These are the two things that will have to be at the top of the agenda for any financial institution that is looking to grow in the long term.
That's great. Ibrahim Sahab, you have actually, mentioned the point CSR, corporate social responsibility. That is also, when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about future trend, but we always forget that, big corporations, big banks, they also have responsibility of doing corporate social responsibility is one of the main factors because whether they will go into digital sphere or conventional sphere, the CSR will always be there. So, thank you for gracing this occasion. I am very thankful to all my panel members and our audience. So, in the end, I want to say few lines that we need to ponder what is really important for us, for our business in short, medium, and long term. So, is it digital transformation? Is it something else? We need to think about it. Are we clear on digital first customers? Because we normally talk about, because in the future when we talk about future trend, we always talk about the digital customers. So are we clear on the digital first customers and what it takes to achieve that milestone, that in a true sense they are the digital first customers, not like in the bits and pieces, doing little bit conventional and doing rest of the things on the digital platform. So we want to make sure that we should have we have some clarity on digital first customers and what are the major risks involved in that. As you mentioned that the information security, cyber security, mine mentioned data privacy. These are all the risks that we face. So it is very crucial, actually, based on our discussion, that we need to focus on that, and to avoid using the term. Sometimes we use digital transformation too much as an excuse to upgrade technology, infrastructure, because sometimes it doesn't bring the required result. So both technology and digital transformation, they are relative terms. So thank you. Thank you for gracing this occasion. I am thankful to the audience as well, who have listened to us patiently. We have crossed 1 hour mark. So thank you, everyone. Have a good day, rest of the day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Khuda Hafiz.